What's up, YouTube? Southern Comic Geek coming to you with. Gotta figure out something with that introduction because, yeah, I don't have a haul video, don't have a mystery bunks video, don't even have an interview today. Today, for at least for a short while, I'm going to be talking about my 2020 accomplishments as far as comic books are concerned and my 2021 goals. Now, before we get into all that goodness, I do want to go ahead and say smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and if you haven't already, hit the bell notification so when videos like this drop ever so randomly, you will be one of the first people to know about it and be able to make the conscious decision as to whether or not watch it now or watch it later. But as long as you watch it, we appreciate you. And so, yeah, so 2020 has definitely been a different year, and we're going to get into that. And we're talking about my comic book collection, and it's been a good year, a very different year as it has been for most everybody. I have been fortunate through this COVID crisis to be able to keep my job. Actually, things are going great, with the day job, as they say. So it has afforded me the opportunity to be able to complete a lot of these goals. Well, let's just get into it. How about that? Let's see here. We're going to add to stream, and we'll do this. Let me do it this way here. I do appreciate anybody that's watching this live or on the rewind. All right, there we go. Wanted to make sure it was looking right on the YouTubes because I've never done this before. And so part of my 2020 comic book journey, if you will, has been doing this YouTube thing. So I started my first YouTube show right after a couple of months, probably if that long, after I started collecting comics again in September of last year, and just kind of come up to the times, at least on some things. Still technologically challenged on some things, but on others, I've come up with the time. So, been quite a year, as I mentioned before. Nothing to sneeze at. I'm sure there are other collectors out there that have done just as much or better than I have, but this is just talking about me and mine. And so here we go. So, as you know, if you keep up with the channel, that I'm largely a set collector. So I don't just collect the keys, but I'm a completionist. And in 2020, I was able to complete my Uncanny X-Men run for volumes 1 through 5, including the annuals for all of those. And so I don't have every single variant, which you had in later issues of Uncanny X-Men, but I have many of the variants. And so if you're just talking about single issues, you're talking about 544 issues, not counting the -1 issue that was issued back in the 90s. Then you are talking about, that's for the first volume. But with my variants that I have and everything, what's going on, Hidden Gem Comics? Stephen Alsbrooks. I think this is the first time I've seen you in the chat, one of my lives, so appreciate you stopping by. But so yeah, with my Uncanny X-Men volumes 1 through 5, the variants that I have and the annuals, you're talking about over 800 comics. And in there, you're talking about the books like X-Men #1, which I got back in March of this year. You're talking about the one everybody thinks about, obviously, is the new team, where it starts off in '94 with the new team, and the first Polaris way back in the X-Men in the '40s. And then you've got the Dark Phoenix saga, or the first Phoenix in X-Men 101. All those right there, I was able to get in some form or grade or the other. Some are higher grades than others. Some are slab, some are raw. I'm one of those that believe in it's better to uh, uh, low grade is better than no grade. And no, they're not all slabbed. Um, Stephen, what I've done, I have the first 10, 11, 12. I have the first 12 slabbed. I probably will get the other, have like the first 20 or 25 slabbed. I have a lot of the latter issues slabbed. Like I've got one of my X-Men 266 first appearance on the cover of Gambit, second appearance of Gambit. I've got that one slabbed and some other latter ones that are more important. But yeah, so I got the first ones slabbed. And if you want to check it out, there's a video on my channel where I gave a tour of my man cave, and I show that on that video. So this would definitely be an accomplishment that people would say, hey, I'm going to call it done. But I thought because I got done early in the year, it was on to the next thing. So starting with Jim Lee's X-Men series in the 90s, for those of you who remember that, that's what I titled the X-Men series. Even though the early Uncanny X-Men were actually X-Men, it didn't change until much later in the title. But if you go with the Jim Lee era on to the current X-Men run, which is currently going on, I have all of those volumes 1 through 4. So it says 1 through 5, but I'm talking about volumes 1 through 5, not just the first 5 issues. And then we also have X-Men volumes 1 through 4. And so the X-Men main title that started with the Jim Lee run went for several issues and then switched, I believe, to New X-Men, and then went back and they picked it up with X-Men Legacy, and they actually had the Legacy numbering. So if you put those behind there, it just picks up the numbering. And those have some awesome covers. Miko Suyan has Mark Brooks covers, Adi Granov. I mean, just gorgeous covers on that X-Men Legacy run. I have all of X-Men Legacy Volume 1, and it does have one annual. I got it as well. Also, the X-Men Gold. And so they broke up the teams into gold, blue, went too hip on the blue. They had the one-offs for black. Of course, I've got those, but the gold one was the best iteration, if you will, outside the main title. And so I have all of those, including the annuals, as well as Astonishing X-Men Volume 4, which was the last iteration of that before the reboot of House of X. And what is going on, Weapon X? Also, because of the X-Men, I'm probably a Cable fan, probably more, but Cable is a latter character, and Cable came much doesn't have near the appearances that Wolverine has. I was able to complete my Cable sets. So the first miniseries by John Romita, and then starting with Art Thibauer's Cable all the way through that first volume with the annuals, and then the ones with the Adi Granov covers, and then the current Cable run is the 4th volume. So I actually have all 4 volumes of Cable as well. Having said that, Wolverine is probably the most prolific character and that I like amongst the X-Men. I like Nightcrawler, but again, he doesn't really have the appearances that Wolverine has. I was able to collect all of Wolverine's first appearances, Hulk 180, 181, and 182. Purchased all 3 of those at the same time. They are currently at CGC awaiting Roy Thomas's signature. As you might know, if you're a follower of the channel, I like signatures. Roy Thomas was the editor of Marvel Comics at that time. And so he is one of the last people. John Romita's still alive, which did the inks on the 181 cover. But as you might be aware, most of the people are now deceased. And so I decided to get Roy Thomas's signature, and they are waiting patiently at CGC for that. I've also picked up, and we'll talk about this in some of my 2021 goals, but I've picked up a lot of foreign editions of 181 in particular. I've got a lot of homages. That's been a very homaged, if that's a phrase, if it ain't, it is now. Very homaged cover, and also got some foreign editions. As of today, I picked up the Spanish and the UK prints of that. So very happy to have those in the collection. Of course, when you're talking about Wolverines first, if you're a Wolverine collector, you know that Foom 2, which is the classic Jim Steranko Hulk cover, but it is the book that a young man sent in a idea for a character, or Hulk 180 even came out. And it was for a guy named the Wolverine who had regenerative abilities. And so if you're a completionist, Foom 2 is definitely for you if you're a Wolverine fan. 10 is the first appearance of the new team. And in that one, it was actually not just concept art, but it was actually art of the characters drawn out. So those are actually the first appearances in my mind of Colossus, Nightcrawler, Storm, and the like. So very early. And then if you're going to talk about early Wolverine, you got to talk Giant Size X-Men #1. So this year I have owned 3 copies of that book. I've sold 2. I only have the 1 now. I bought one to specifically sell, and I bought a low grade as my first one. I sold it and have since got another one. I sent it off after I got it, and cracked it open because I bought it already slabbed as a 3.5. It was signed by Herb Trimpe, who was the guy that first draw Wolverine, and I sent it off, got it pressed, and it came back a 4.5. So really happy to have that in the collection. Don't know that I'll ever try to get a bigger grade because I'm comfortable with that and with the signature that you can't get anymore in the collection. So I completed a lot of my Valiant from VH1. So VH1 is not the movie video show or channel. It is Valiant Heroes 1. So if you hear people refer to VH1 and VH2, that's from the original run of Valiant that started back in the early 90s, and then the reboots that started in 2012, that's VH2. So I've completed a lot of my Valiant runs: Solar, Shadow Man, Eternal Warrior, Armstrong and Armstrong, Bloodshot, Rye, all those, completed those. There's a few nuanced ones. What's going on, Big Will? How are you today, sir? Appreciate the 6 of you who are in the chat watching. And for those of you catching on the rewind, you as well. But I was able to complete those. And for some people, they would say, why waste your money on Valiant? Well, that's a good question. And if I was worried about spec, I certainly wouldn't pay for Valiant. To be honest, a lot of the various issues I found in dollar bins, which is thrilling to me. And that's who I'm collecting for, right? Is me. So if it appeals to my taste or brings that nostalgic kick that everybody longs to have, then that's what I collect. And with the Valiant, what one cannot argue is that pre-Unity Valiant, where Jim Shooter took the Valiant and took it to where it was, this is prior to Shooter's departure, cannot argue of the quality of the writing and the art in those early Valiant. And I've said it many times before. I'll say it again. Barry Windsor Smith, Don Perlin, Jim Shooter writing, Bob Layton, all these guys that came over after his departure from Marvel, and basically, just started a whole new universe, the 3rd largest connected universe. Obviously, today it's a shadow of its former self, but I was able to complete a lot of those sets, and there's some that are really ghost out there. But I'll get into that a little bit later. But those I'm still searching for. They're just not as easily obtained, and they're not quite as cheap as one would believe. With VH1 or the old Valiant, basically you have the pre-Unity stuff that's expensive, and then you have the last issues, and the last issues being because they were of the scarcity of it. Hey, well, I'm glad I could learn you something today, Stephen. So I was also in that able to get a Barry Windsor Smith signature. If you know about Barry Windsor, he is an odd bird. And so to get his signature, you just don't come across him. He doesn't, frequent cons or anything like that. So I was able to get an Archer and Armstrong Gold signed by Barry Windsor Smith and Bob Layton. Sent it off, got it pressed and slabbed because I bought it raw. Got a Bloodshot sketch by Don Perlin. Don Perlin was the artist that first drew. I think he's credited with its creation as well, Bloodshot. And he's also the one that first drew Moon Knight, which he's probably more known for, but he did a lot of work at Marvel. I was able to complete my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles run. Now, that's issues 1 through 62. So I have, and some of them I have the multiple prints. Like with issue 1, I have the 3rd print, I have the 4th print, I have some of the reprints that came out much later. And then, like number 7, I've got the 2nd print and the 1st print. Having said that, there are some other ones like issue 2 that I don't have the 1st and 2nd print. I only have the 3rd. So it's complete in the sense of numerically. It's not complete in regards to all of the issues that are available. So it is complete, but if I come across some of those that I don't have, I just don't know that I ever want to put down the money that is wanted for a TMNT #1 first print. I just don't know as a collector if I'm willing to bite that bullet. Um, to me, and I do buy expensive books. I mentioned earlier that I just bought the Mexican La Masa. That's the first appearance, or first, that's Hulk 181 in Spanish. And I bought the British Pence first appearance of Hulk, first appearance of Wolverine, rather. And with those two right there, go look them up on Key Collector, and they're not joking what they cost. And in both, one I bought from Britain and one I bought from Spain. So I will drop money. Obviously, I got a Hulk 181. And Craig 69 says, I had a pet turtle once. That's good. That's good. Name it Mikey. That's a good name for it, Steven. Legion of Comics. What's going on, man? I was in your live stream earlier. So, yeah, so it's 1 through 62. So it's complete, but not, if you want to be technical with all the printings, it's not complete. So, but if you want to say that, I mean, the Uncanny X-Men's the same way. Because there's some 3rd, 4th prints I don't have. I don't count reprints, but 1st, 2nd prints, not a reprint. Is it? I don't know. Depends on your collecting. I am now only 4 books away from having Batman Volume 1, which ended with issue 713. I'm 4 books away from having 300 to 713. So maybe I hit that before year's end. I doubt it, because one of those recently got specced up, and that's the first Luke Fox. I don't think it's long-term spec, so I'm going to kind of wait till that book cools a little bit, and then I will come back after it. But I'm only 4 away from it, and I've got other books that are older than that. I've got this year I was able to pick up a Batman 8. That's the Infinity cover, Batman 13. So I was able to pick up those and a lot of the 200s, which we'll talk about later. But to be 4 books, and the majority of those I got this year, because I really started honing in on that Batman Volume 1, which I've got all of Volume 2 and 3, which 3 is the current run. But I really started honing on that Batman once I finished my Uncanny X-Men collection. That was the next one that I really started going after. So basically since March. So I have, like I said, been able to pick up 8 and 13. Of course, 155 is the first Silver Age Penguin. The 171's first Silver Age Riddler. 181's first Poison Ivy. Big Will, who was in the chat. That's who I picked that one up from. 189 is the first Silver Age Scarecrow. And 227 is the classic homage to Detective. Big Will still. How's it going? Don Dizzle's up in the house. else. So we got some of the scumbag crew up in here. I also was able to pick up Werewolf by Night 32 and Tomb of Dracula 10. Those are two big books. Werewolf, obviously, the first appearance of Moon Knight, and Tomb of Dracula, or TOD, as it abbreviated here, is the first appearance of Blade. Both of those I bought raw from members of the community and had them pressed by the Comic Book Presser on Instagram, and used Burke Family's coupon to our code so that you can get free shipping. So there's your plug right there. But yeah, so I've got those slabbed. Those are the two books that CGC got the labels backwards, if you remember that. And so glad to have those books in there. So it's been a huge year, and we're not even done yet. Like I said, I just picked up the Spanish and the British version of Hulk 181 today. Bit the bullet and bought them off the Feebay, and they will be shipping to me sometime in the new year. Yeah, Comic Burrito, I wouldn't press them if you're not planning on slabbing them, because most of those imperfections that pressing fixes, it only fixes temporarily. So unless you're going to encapsulate it, it doesn't make sense to press it. Yeah, just my opinion. Unless you were doing it yourself, in which case, just go ahead and do it just because for the fun of it. But yeah, so the year's not even up yet, and I'm already looking into 2021. And if 2020 wasn't a big enough year, 2021 plans to be, hopefully we'll get back into the con season. I love getting out into the community and meeting up with fellow collectors that I've met through YouTube and Instagram. Just this past week was with Vincent McLean, the Comic Machine, and we had a good time, and we're going to actually have a show on his channel tonight about that, showing off some of the books that we picked up at the shops we visited that day. So be sure to check out his show for that. I believe it's at 7 o'clock Central Time. But I've met with Big Will, got with Dustin from Two Brothers Comics. I know I've told Adrian, Panda Awesome, that we need to get together and go dig through some loan boxes. Really cool deal. Met Batman Popster. So I've met several of the people in the community. You want to be able to meet more. Cons are a perfect opportunity to do that. So hopefully things turn around. We'll see. But goals for 2021. Collect Batman 200 through 713. Now, I mentioned that I was only 4 away from hitting that 300 to 713. So I have 61 that I need to get in the 200s to complete that as well. So, 61 plus 4, 65. So currently I need 65 to have Batman Volume 1, 200 through 713. I don't know that I've got some of the 100s, and then, like I said, the single digit. But I'll have to evaluate it. I said after I completed my Uncanny X-Men that I wasn't going to go after anything that hard anymore, but I lied to myself. So decided to pick up the Batman, and it's been fun. I've tried to collect more organically with the Batman than what I've done with the Uncanny X-Men. COVID really clamped down that because you weren't able to get out as much and visit the cons. But Craig 69, yeah, everybody's got their deal, and I go back and forth with the slabbing deal myself. I was thinking about this today when I bought those foreign Hulk 181s. I'm like, when I get them in, do I really want to send them off and get slabbed? Because they would be some of the few that are out there that are slabbed, and that would encapsulate them and, in theory, keep them safe. But I don't get to open them up. And in the case of the foreigns, they can be different than the insides of the coloring and everything. So I go back and forth myself on it. So if I was able to pick up those 65 books, that would certainly be a deal, because when you get into the 200s, you're talking about Neil Adams's run on that. And I've got, like I said, 227. I've got 251. It's the classic Joker cover. And several of those that are, the first Ra's al Ghul. I've got most of those, but So they're not really that expensive. But you're not talking about stuff you're finding in the dollar bin. You're talking about stuff that if you're getting into a mid to lower grade, you're talking about $40 books, which starts adding up. But hey. Then I'm planning on finishing my VH1. That's the Valiant Heroes 1 and the Acclaim runs. So I put this on here and I'm still kind of torn. We'll see how it goes. But the Acclaim runs, for those of you who don't know, Acclaim purchased Valiant. And then eventually they rebooted the Valiant universe. And when they Acclaim was ahead of its time because Acclaim purchased Valiant with the purpose of people familiar with the comics then translating into video games, much the same way Disney does today with movies, video games, and books, etc. But unfortunately they hit the wrong place at the wrong time. The market tanked on them and they filed bankruptcy. So when you come to VH2 at the reboot of 2012, most of the stuff that they redid the whole characters with, it went away. There's a couple of things that they did keep from the Acclaim runs, but for the most part, Acclaim is like it wasn't even there. Because Acclaim rebooted the characters, even giving them different origins. Ninjax is probably the wonkiest because Ninjak, instead of being essentially a ninja James Bond, essentially being that, instead he's a guy like Shazam that says Ninjak and he turns into a ninja. What they did was, or they called themselves doing, was rebooting it so it's more video game friendly. Whatever. So there's some of the, and I've got all the Bloodshot, I've got the EXO, I've got the main titles from characters I really care about already, but there's some that I'm not sure about. Trinity Angels is one of them. I've got Troublemakers, even though I was kind of iffy on that series. Am I that much of a completionist to be able to say I have them all, even though they pretty much suck? I don't know. Comment in the chat or comment down below. It's just my completionist nature, I guess. Goal should be to gift Star Wars to Mr. G so you can have a space. Talking about Star Wars, you're very timely. So complete Star Wars Volume 1. So Volume 1 is the old Marvel series that started with Roy Thomas and Howard Chaykin's take on Star Wars. For those who might not be aware, when they started that, Lucas went to Marvel, which was known as the House of Ideas, to try to boost Star Wars by putting it out in comic books. It is not really, it's very, very loosely based on the source material because the writers didn't even watch the movie. So later, I think in issue 7, they came up with this green rabbit named Jackson. And eventually, as it is rumored, George Lucas said, all right, we got to nix Jackson. He is nowhere in this mythos. We got to get rid of him, and he disappears. I guess he got with the Lucas Mafia or something. So there are 27 books. There's one extra book when Marvel started printing Star Wars again. They kind of legacy numbered that one last issue, but I have it. But I need 27 of those books. And I've got most of the big ones. I've got one. I've got the first appearance of the Mandalorians and origin of Boba Fett and all that kind of stuff. The one where he falls in the Sarlacc pit. I've got big ones. So really it's just a matter of picking them up. But with the heat from The Mandalorian, it has definitely picked up the value of these books. Used to, I found a bunch of them in dollar bins in decent shape, but now you're going to pay upwards of $5 to $15 for them, depending on the shape that they're in. And the 27, yes, they're not really big books. They're not big keys, but they're not the ones that you just see every day. So, but I think that one's still fairly easily done. I've seen a lot of them and I passed over them like last week when I was in Dallas. I passed over some of them because I was focusing on other things that I was trying to finish. So sometimes you just have to make those hard decisions. Haven't been able to get those now. Now I can't, right? collect more foreign editions. So interesting thing to me, and probably was introduced to this in all honesty from Comic Tom 101. He did a show on this talking about Spider-Man and how in Mexico, because Spider-Man was selling well with Gwen Stacy, when it came to the Americans killing her off, they didn't kill her. And so the stories were she got married to Peter Parker and they had a family, so on and so forth, but it's not considered canon. And I thought that was interesting. And then I just got to digging some more into these foreign editions. And I think that we all have our Grail books, right? Whether it's X-Men 1, Hulk 181, Star Wars 1, whatever it is, we all have our Grail books. So sometimes when we finally hit those Grail books, we start grasping for stuff. And I say we very loosely because I'm talking about me. That's the only person I can really speak for. But I think that there's others like in that sense, that we grab stuff that, okay, this is really second tier. I'm collecting this because I've already collected all this other. But what if there was a way to continue to collect that one cover or that one issue that you like, and you still got, and more so, the thrill of the hunt? Because anybody can go on eBay. There's really not a big thrill in going on eBay. You don't get the same dose of dopamine when you go on eBay, as opposed to finding a random comic shop or going to a Comic Con and digging through a long box and finding it at random. You just don't get it. But when dealing with foreigns, that's a totally different deal, because a lot of them are going online because we're not world travelers. And you're going in there and you're having to research this and research that. It's a lot of work, but I think that in the end, it can be very rewarding. So I'm probably going to be picking up more foreign editions. I mentioned the Hulk 181s that I picked up today for the Spanish and the British Pence version of that. And so I'll probably be doing more of that going into the next year. What's going on, David Ewan? Appreciate you showing up. There is a Mexican Foal UF4. Yes, there is. And the other thing about it, aside from the Hulk 181s I mentioned, for the most part, you can have it a lot less expensive than what you would be paying for, say, a big book. I mean, you can get, generally, not the Spanish or the British versions, but there's a lot of other ones too. You can get them a lot cheaper than you can get a 181. So if you're wanting a legit 181, think about a Dutch one. I mean, are you really going to read it anyway? Are you buying it for the value, or are you buying it just so you can say, hey, I've got this Hulk 181, and feeling that sense of accomplishment because you like Wolverine as a character or so? Just some thoughts. But yeah, there's some neat little nuances with their stuff. The coloring, sometimes the art's redrawn to match that cover, but it's not really the original art that you really have to dig for. So I've gotten X-Men foreigns that have Die Spine on there. So it's got Spider-Man on the front cover. So if you're trying to look for X-Men 94 as an example, is one I've got. That's the first Moira McTaggart. You really can't do it that way, and it's not that simple. There's the Spawn 9, the first appearance of Angela. They got an embossed cover. I think it's a Mexican variant, so that's pretty cool. And I just did a show on this last night with Define 999 and also Rob's Comics, and so check that out if you weren't able to watch that on the live. So this is the last thing that I'll say regarding my goals for next year, and is to have fun. It's so easy in this FOMO culture that we live in to forget about that, right? Why am I collecting comics? And for those people who are, get this right. Yeah. So for those people who are speculators, who are doing it for money, there's nothing against that. I mean, it takes them all to go around in the world. But if you're just a collector and you like the character, it brings back nostalgia, whatever the case may be, you like reading the stories, you like looking at the art, all of the above. remember what you're doing it for. You're not doing it to brag to somebody else that, hey, I've got this book and you don't. You're not doing it to say, hey, I'm putting my life savings in in this book's going to be an investment for my retirement. For the most part, no. For those who are, know what you're for. And if you're doing it just to have as a hobby, then do just that. Have fun. It's easy in that FOMO culture, though, to forget about that and to worry more about getting the latest edition. Um, of whatever the hottest book is. All you got to do is have a hint of a movie announcement, and then voila, now everything is spiking up. Or in the case of, I mentioned Batman earlier, first Luke Fox, spec because he's going to be the new Batman for Future State. That's only going to last a few months, and then it's going to go away. But everybody gets hyped up. They run and go push up the prices on eBay, and then the prices everywhere. And again, if you make money off it, no problem. I sell comic books too, so I'm not saying anything wrong with that. It's just that as a collector, all those things that I mentioned before, those goals, those were not goals for my retirement. Those were not goals for to sell. Those were goals for in my PC, in a box, for me to read somewhere, and me to appreciate the art, appreciate the experience of collecting it, all of the above. And so whatever it is, um, it's like people that hate on Valiant, or it's like people that say, well, you only need the keys, or it's like people that I hear that say that they don't even read the books. It's like, look, man, you do you and I do me, right? Some people are DC, some are, dyed in the wool Marvel, some are like indies all, whatever floats your boat, whatever floats your boat. It's just that I'm not going to try to compare my collection to somebody else's, because there's always going to be somebody else out there. Let's say Silver Age Dave, for example. And of course, he doesn't do that. I've just seen his collection in his videos, that he's got a huge, massive collection. But I remind myself that I just started back last year. So those 7,400 comics that I got sitting over there in the corner came from from a year of collecting, because all my other stuff was gone. I got rid of it for the most part, except for one loan box. And so, you remind yourself of that. Or if somebody doesn't have the funds available and they only read digital, I don't like reading digital. People read digital. Some people like graphic novels. I go back and forth. There's some things I like a graphic novel on, and some things I don't. So, it's whatever, again, float your boat, because there's so many different communities out there within the comic realm. Think about the omnibus community. I mean, they do make valid points in regards to their omnibuses, room, reading pleasure, so on and so forth. Jim Mint largely is an omnibus collector, but he picks up floppies now too. But if that's your thing, great. If it's your thing to spec away. Yeah. Look, yeah. Well, so here's the other thing about it. So think about it this way: if the speculators were not there, your books would be worthless. Now, if you're okay with that, then because if the people, if people, those speculators, when you say speculators, I guess it depends on how you define that. People that just go out and scalpers, if you will, they go out there and they'll grab up all the issues of the newest number one that comes off the shelf, and then they'll sell it to you for double the price. But it's people like that are selling comic books. Any seller is benefiting from some of those scalpers, whether they're your local comic shop. So think about your LCS. Would your LCS be in business if those scalpers weren't there? Are there enough people in the hobby that couldn't care less as to whether or not this book is worth 10 cents or $10 or $10,000? And do you, as a collector, really care? I can't say that I don't care. It's not the main thing, but I do appreciate when I find out that my book's actually worth money. It makes me feel like, hey, got good taste, maybe. So it's Craig is a flipper. Craig is a flipper. Yeah, and you're right. Yeah, you're right. That is largely what drives prices today. Um, and right or wrong or indifferent, that is what drives it. Um, Hulk 180 and 181 are both getting out of reach. That's right. And so maybe a foreign edition or a facsimile. Um, you know, and we all got our nuances, and it largely comes from where we started in collecting and our personalities. And so, what's good for me might not be good for you. Um, some people are totally okay with facsimiles. I'll collect the facsimiles, in which case you mentioned 180 and 181. I have them. So nothing against them. I just don't count them as the exact book. Some people do. And if they do, that's fine too. I assume that Craig's little mad face is towards you, Don Dizzle. so, um, and so I have what I'm going to do now is let me put this in here. I get them to hang on the wall. Yeah, I mean, and if that's what you do, cool. And I totally get that. I mean, I've got my stuff set up over there, so I can just change them out at will. It's a little more work now that you have to dig with that many comics to dig through them and to change them out. So it kind of pushes me not to do it as much as what I used to, but I can change them out at will. And, it makes me happy, and that's the main thing. So I dropped the StreamYard chat. If anybody wants to jump on, if you want to talk about some of your collection accomplishments this year, or talk about some of your collection goals for next year, then feel free. As long as I know you're not a little Vernon, we'll let you on, and we'll talk about it. Now, I do want to mention, while people are thinking about that, I do want to mention the X-Men 4 that I'm going to be giving away. So, first appearance of Scarlet Witch, X-Men 4 from 1963 or 64. And so it's a low grade, but a low grade is better than no grade, right? And it is slabbed. So, what you need to do is check out my 600 subscriber giveaway show. And it says 600 subscriber giveaway show, 750 subscriber announcement. I think's how it's titled. And if you go on there and you watch the video, you can fast forward it towards the end. Hit the like button too. I'm trying to play with the algorithm. I always say algorithm because Agu changed his name to algorithm to play with that. So it'll tell you how that you can enter to win. There's 3 different ways you can enter to win, and you can have up to 16 chances to win if you do all 3. So check that out if you have not already, and you want a chance to win an X-Men 4. Who wouldn't, right? I mean, even if you just turned around and flipped it. Rigged. I never won any of these giveaways. You did win a giveaway in the form of a gift. How about that, Mr. Garrow? So in a ways you did win, right? So, but yeah, so COVID aside, I'm hoping that a lot of the hype surrounding COVID, now that it's not an election year, now that a new president's in the White House, don't want to get all political, but reality, that they all of a sudden, supposedly, there's not going to be no problems no more, right? That people will largely go back to normalcy. If it means I'm going to have to wear a mask, that sucks, but it's the reality of it. Because I know as early as April, they're having the Huntsville Comic Con, and I plan on going to that. Chris Claremont's going to be back there. I'm sure I'll find something for him to sign. And then several other people are supposed to be there as well that were not there this year. Yeah, you can't claim she's not amused. Yeah, you're like, hey man, check what I got out. Okay. And she was as excited about it. What's interesting about that So I got a bigger print from a local artist had done for Darth Maul, and once I get it back, I'll post it up on my Instagram. But I think I showed this off on the Saturday morning cartoon show at some point during that, and showed off that. But I'm getting it framed, and it's going to have a place for a picture with me and Ray Park in there. And so my wife was like, "What is this? He looks so evil. He is evil. He's a Sith. That's what they do. And that's why they designed him to look that way. It's not, some innocent little guy. This is not a Zabrak that's a Jedi. This is a Zabrak that has body tattoos that are red and made to look evil. Um, but she went and took it to Hobby Lobby the other day and got it doled out. That's why I sent Mr. Garrett. I sent you a picture of it to show you how because they can take it at Hobby Lobby and put it like it's going to look for you, so you can get an idea whether or not the colors really match or not. So it's in a black frame, red border. So I think it'll look pretty cool up under my Dave Dorman print, which I just recently posted on my IG. I've had that Dave Dorman print. My wife and I were dating at the time. We started dating in 1995. We got married in 97. And I want to say that was before we got married. So probably, 96 or so is when I got that Dave Dorman print off of QVC. We saw it on QVC, and I said, "Man, I'd love to have that for a present." So my grandmother bought it for me. She called QVC and ordered it. And interestingly enough, my mother's maiden name, is Dorman, and so maybe I'm kin to him somehow or another. That'd be pretty cool. Now, recently, I did order a sketch print done by Bart Sears. For those of you who might not be familiar who Bart Sears is, he did a lot of work on Exo Man of War, Turok back in the day, did some 90s Blade for Marvel, and some other stuff, did some X-Men stuff. But largely I know him from the Valiant thing. And so I got him to do a sketch cover for me. And so hopefully it will soon be done. But I don't even remember where I was. Oh, and so the guy that facilitates that is the same guy that facilitates Dave Dorman's signings. And so there was, and you can check this out on IG, but there was some stuff that Dave Dorman had done with Boba Fett from the recent Mandalorian. Man, that was straight fire. Maybe into the next year. Now, I didn't mention this on my goals, but if cons become more of a thing, I'll go back to getting sketch covers. Usually when I've been to cons, I like to get at least 1 to 2 sketch covers, depending on how prolific the artist list they have is there. So normally I pick an artist that has actually drawn the character I want them to draw. And the reason why is because I would kick myself if because some artists do really well on some characters and some don't. It's like, okay, you need to stick with this character over here because you don't really do a good job with this one. At least in my opinion. They can all draw better than me and they actually get paid for it. So who knew? But so I normally get one that's actually drawn one before, and I'll give them an idea, and then they can, draw on that. That way, I feel like I've got a pretty safe bet of being pleased with it. So anything Star Wars, Dave Dorman's going to light on fire, right? But if they have a lot of talent at those cons that I'm familiar with enough to say, hey, I want to get a sketch cover of this guy, then I'll do that. And some of these older guys, Mark Silvestri, I'm not a huge fan of Mark Silvestri, but I did appreciate his Cyber Force from Image back in the day, as well as his X-Men run, and wanted to get a sketch from him. Not on $1,000, he ain't. So that's one of those name your price that you really don't want to do it at. So I'll say $1,000. And they say, no, I'm not going to do that. Okay, you didn't really hurt his feelings because he really don't want to do it. But some of those guys, they'll do it for a couple $100. I know Tyler Kirkham did one for me earlier this year with Red Hood and beating up the Joker. That was like $300. which was pretty reasonable because normally when you have the interactions of two people on the cover at the detail that he did it at, normally that drives the price up. So at $300, it wasn't too out of range. But I mean, I got Clayton Crane to do one for 160. I don't know if he just felt sorry because he kept making me come back because he was just so busy, and he gave me a deal at that. I don't know, but so plan to get some more of those. What's going on, the Varangian Vigilante up in the house? Thorsten, what's going on with you? Appreciate you stopping by. I did drop the link in the chat. If anybody wants to join in, be forewarned, you're going to have to show yourself, your face that is, before I let you in the stream, especially if I'm not familiar with who you are. So tonight, I'm more than likely going to be on Mr. Comics 89's channel. He's opening up a huge Spider-Man Grail. He's going after the ASM run, all, was it 5 or 6, 7 volumes technically. But he's getting a very early ASM for Christmas, and his wife is letting him open it. So I'll probably be on that. I'm going to be on Vincent McLean, the Comic Machines channel at 7. Then I am going to probably be on Barbarian Kung Fu's show tonight, selling some books. Then tomorrow, I have got a show at 2 o'clock Central Time with Sith Lordley. He's got his own channel, but he's more known for Spine Ticks, show that they do on nights. So he will be on there. We'll be talking Star Wars collection. So you're going to be talking about toys. You're going to be talking about books. You're going to be talking about art prints, the whole 9 yards. Because when you're talking about Star Wars, you're just talking about a very expansive plethora of collections, right? Because with Marvel, you really don't have the book thing so much. I mean, Star Wars before, even after Phantom Menace, but before Phantom Menace even, had a huge catalog of books. And I know I believe he did as well, read them. And so, I mean, they had a whole universe that basically Disney, flipped off and said, we don't care. Now Disney has gone back and picked bits and pieces of it up and made it canon, so to speak. But for the most part, they did away with it, and some of it before Phantom Menace came out was kind of wonky. I feel like with the Vong trilogy that they did, well, the trilogy is 3 books, so it was longer than 3, but the Vong series that they did would have been great for a couple of movies. That would have been a good way to put in the new characters. And why couldn't they have just kept Jason, Janna, and Anakin, which were the 3 kids that Han and Leia had, and then Ben, which was actually Luke's and Myra's son. When Marvel rebooted, and they gave Ben, the kid, to Leia, whatever. I didn't like the idea of taking away Mara Jade, though. That was one of my favorite characters. They have since gone back with the Rebels cartoon and now The Mandalorian and added Thrawn back in there. They did redo his backstory a little bit because, for those of you who are familiar with it, Thrawn was killed at the 3rd book, and then he was done. There were some books that came back. Timothy Zahn, who created him, came back with, but he was really already dead. So, Thrawn was a great character. I was glad they came back with him. But there's just so much in the Marvel universe to talk about. So we'll probably be a while for that one. Then Thursday, pretty sure they will add Mara sometime. What will happen? I have the books to sell. Well, you're talking about that. So the first books, Star Wars books that I read were the Jedi Academy books. And Kip Duran was the main guy that they found. Han and Chewie found him in a mine, and he was like super powerful in the Force, actually more powerful than Luke in the books. He did not have the discipline Luke did, so he never was technically more powerful than him, if that makes sense. So for the longest time, I had 3 of the 4-part miniseries of the Jedi Academy Dark Horse had put out. Okay. So I finally, Cat 60 was putting up a whole setup. No, it was not Cat. It was Shelby Comics. He was putting up a whole set of them. And I was like, well, I only need one of them. So I'm going to buy the whole set. And then I turned around and I sold the 3 I didn't need. I can't remember who. I think it was ME Comics that bought the other ones from me. And lo and behold, now it's a hot book. It's like, who knew? I just sold it for $3. That's usually the way it goes, though, right? You sell a book. Another example, more recent example of this, all the Star Wars books. I basically gave them away to some guy named Garrel. But anyway, the Star Wars books, but the Miles Morales. So I had a second printing of Miles Morales' first appearance. And man, I thought I made out like a bandit when I sold it for $20, and then like the next week or two, an announcement about a video game came out and that book shot up. I'm like, crap, come on, man. You're killing me here, Smalls. You're killing me. Anybody catch that? Anybody catch that reference? I said that around, I forget who it was I said that around, and they go, what are you talking about, Smalls? Forget it. Never mind. Just forget it. What's going on, man? How are you doing? Playing some Batman Arkham Knight the other night, last night, and I jumped in the chat there. So never cry over books that you didn't lose money on. Yeah, and that's a great point. On that is you're right. As long as I didn't lose money, I'm good. And I tell you an example of that. And I purposely done it this way. There was a member of the community. I was in a chat, and this member of the community mentioned his Grail books because the host was talking about 2021 goals. And this particular person said, "Hey, I'm looking for this particular book in a newsstand copy." And I just so happened to have that one book in a newsstand copy. Found it in little old Oxford, Mississippi. In a comic shop up there. That comic shop's not much of nothing. Just randomly found it. And so I sold it to him. He felt like it was a great deal. I sold it to him from less than what I could have got for it, but it was more than I paid for it. And he got the book that he wanted, and he felt like he got a good deal. It was a win-win-win, right? It went to a good home. It completed his set, and so I was happy to help him complete that set. So you're right. There are worse things in life to cry over, or better things to cry over. Depends on how the way you look at it. But then if you did not lose money on a book, and did not lose money on the book, so that is definitely good. So we are coming up on an hour. No one has jumped in the video feed, so I assume that we are about done here. I do want to encourage everybody to go check out that 600 subscriber giveaway that I mentioned earlier, talking about the X-Men 4. See how you can enter to win. You don't have to be inside the United States. I will ship it worldwide, but you do have to be over 18, and you do have to be a subscriber to the channel. David Ewing says, having issues with the internet. Well, maybe someday in the future. No problem, man. It happens to the best of us. So as far as check that out and get that going. And look, you might not be an X-Men fan. You might want to A-OK it to another X-Men fan, and that would be certainly okay. But before you get out of here, smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and the bell notification so that when videos like this drop so randomly, you will be able to know when they do and make the conscious decision as to whether or not to watch it now or later. As long as you watch it, we're good. Do appreciate the folks that have hung out with me, and those who catch it on the rewind. That's good. And of course, Don Dizzles says, see ya. And that's about what I'm going to say, because I'm going to say, until next time, keep reading and keep collecting.